recording. All right. Take us away, man.
Or you can stitch them together. It's like, you remember that Homer Simpson episode?
No, what?
Or the Simpsons episode, where Homer's interviewed.
You know that show with Homer Simpson, and I think there were other Simpsons involved? I can't remember the
There are
name
a couple
of it.
more, yeah. There's like anyways, there's a clock behind him, and he's being interviewed, and they like the clock just keeps jumping because they stitch it together to have him say crazy things. That's pretty good. Anyways.
And just, no, I'm not going to stitch any of this together, and so do it right the first time.
Let's do it.
All right, intro us.
Hello, Jan.
Hey, Adam. How's it going?
It's going great. I'm excited to kick off Season 2 of CTF Radio. Let's welcome our viewers. Welcome, viewers.
Hey, viewers.
Adam Dupay.
I am Jan Shoshashvili, a.k.a. Zardus, or Jan, or Dr. Jan, or Mr. Dr. Jan, or Mr. Dr. Zardus. Any of those is acceptable?
Exactly. And you might know me from, Adam, from such YouTube hits as all the classes I have that are awesome, and my awesome Pwnable KR walkthroughs, and just now CTF Radio. So, we ran Season 1 of CTF Radio. The pandemic was raging. Everything was going crazy. And now, here we are. Season 2 of CTF Radio beginning.
Boom.
Boom. Boom. Exactly. So, this is a special episode. For one, I, Adam, am very excited about, just getting rolling again, right? Jan has been dragging his feet. He's constantly off on tangents. He has this new shiny thing. He's got like a hoodie that turns into a martial arts uniform now. It's just a whole thing. So, couple of things right off the bat for Season 2 that maybe we should discuss. Actually, maybe first we should talk about what CTF Radio is for those joining us today for the first time. Jan, do you want to introduce the concept?
Sure, yeah. CTF Radio is a concept that Adam and Jan came up with as a podcast to discuss the thing that we're just super passionate about, which is cybersecurity and specifically capture the flag competitions. So me, Jan, and what I've actually found is when you're doing an impersonation of somebody, the more that you say you are who you are, it actually makes it better.
That's
right?
brilliant, Jan.
Yeah, Jan is...
You're so
me,
smart.
Jan is full of really good ideas. That's why me, Jan, got a PhD. I really studied a lot. And it came from my love of capture the flag competitions. When I, first started attending DEF CON with my friends, and one of my great friends, Sean, we met hacking into servers and messing with each other and really bonded over our love of Linux. And so we've rolled with this now that we're both of us old graying men, and now we're talking to the world about CTFs.
Absolutely. And as Adam, one of the things that I'm very passionate about is making CTF more accessible, right? And part of that is talking about it with a larger audience. So, of course, it's easy to talk about Capture the Flag competitions with Capture the Flag players. And many of our listeners are Capture the Flag players. And to them, we hope to bring kind of a new, interesting perspective, interviews with new, interesting people, and so on. To the outsiders, so to say, to CTF, we hope to bring a glimpse, a lens into a world where hacking is not the scary, weird thing that it's seen as from the outside, but where hacking is, as Jan would say, a dance.
I'm not sure if I've ever said that as Jan, but I do appreciate that. And actually, one of the things that I'm very passionate, Jan, is very passionate about is the notion of how do we take people who are really interested in cybersecurity, because we get a ton of people who contact us either through the podcast or through other means that are really interested in cybersecurity, they're interested in hacking, and they don't know how to get started. So Jan, I created this site called pwn.college, which I mentioned about 1,000 times during the first season of CTF Radio. And it was a way.
And it makes sense. It's an incredible website.
Yeah, it's not only if I mean Yahoo was an incredible website in the 90s, but it was just a website. Pwn.college is a revolutionary approach to teaching cybersecurity and hacking concepts through the pedagogical techniques of continued and deliberate practice.
I think there's a movie that's very similar to this.
Is it A Beautiful Mind?
That might also be it, but as Adam, I'm a big fan of Karate Kid. You know, the concept of wax on, wax off. It's very sounds very related.
Yeah, good job, Adam-san.
Hi. Yeah. So, do you want to talk about Jan, your the Pwn.college kind of news that we have today?
No, I want to stop doing this monstrosity.
All right, ready then?
The real Jan forced upon us for this April Fool's episode.
What?
We said we'd do it 10 minutes. I think we maybe lasted 4. We'll see how much I cut out of this.
1, 2, 3. April Fools!
Oh, April Fools. I didn't know.
Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3. April Fools! Psych! I'm Jan.
I'm Adam. And yeah, so now I actually... we were slightly joking there, but there actually has, Jan, for the first time, as we did talk about, was running a completely open instance of Pwn.college. So anyone from around the world could join, along with students at ASU who are taking it for class. So can you talk about what the students were like, that their skill level when they joined the class? Can you talk about that mix between being open, and how many students did you have open versus at ASU, and then where kind of they ended up at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pwn.college, as kind of we talked about last semester, right? It was this experimental thing that was running during season 1 of the podcast and evolving during season 1 of the podcast.
Devolving at all?
Maybe a little devolving, but mostly we were evolving. But sometimes you have to devolve to evolve. It's like I said, hacking is a dance, right? Yep. There's back and forth.
You say that all the time.
It's
definitely not something I've just heard you say now for the first time.
I do have a way with words sometimes. No, so the platform, the idea was that as someone fairly competent in computer science itself, but not really a master at hacking, right? You should be able to sit down and tackle these hacking tackle these hacking lectures and hacking lessons and hacking challenges, right? And as we referred to during the April Fool's joke segment, there is an inspiration of kind of a wax on, wax off approach where you start doing these small steps and you do that over and over and over and over, and eventually you suddenly realize that, hey, I can exploit a real program when everything kind of comes together suddenly. So anyways, Pwn.college is this journey through like 12 modules of different aspects of software security. Because of COVID, it was also open to the world. So the office hours were streamed live on Twitch. I had live kind of demo lectures on Twitch. I had all the lectures uploaded to YouTube, and they're still there, right? You can go to pwn.college.
But to be clear, you did that on your own. It's not like COVID actually went and uploaded those videos and made
That's
the Twitch
right.
things.
Yes, I did that. It had been a plan for a while, but you can have this plan for ages, and many other plans. But the plan was always record YouTube videos, upload them, etc. Have this online resource. And of course, nothing ever happened, right? Always, it was the night before the lecture. I was like, well, I'm obviously not going to record it. I'll just do it live. And then record it the day after, and that obviously never happened. And but with COVID, you kind of have to do it. Right. Suddenly, we were all teaching online, etc. So this all suddenly happened.
And then once you're there, right? So if you're already having to deliver the class online to the 70 or 100 students who are enrolled, why not open it up to more people? Exactly.
Why not open it up? And at some point, we're talking about basically just more server compute, right? So that's what we did. We opened it up. We had 200 students in the class to begin with. And by the end of the class, we had about 100 and something, ASU students remaining. ASU the students have a high drop rate. Like they sign up for more classes than they plan to take, and then they see which ones they're interested in, and so forth. So that's fine. The really cool thing is that we also had about probably over the semester we built up a core of about 40 non-ASU students that really pushed through like heavily the entire material alongside the students that were graded on it. Wow. Right? So these are students that there's no reason for them to put in all this work, and pwn.college is an enormous.
And when you say no reason, you mean like they're not getting any credit for this. I mean, and it's kind of almost a nice thing. I mean, as an educator, one of the things that always kind of stresses us out is when students are just trying to learn the material to get an A, right? Where they don't really, they're not fully understanding it or fully understanding it deeply or applying it, right? I would much rather a student, like be able to exploit things, understand the core of vulnerabilities and get a C or a B because they choose not to do whatever else, versus a person who gets an A and doesn't like actually understand or appreciate the core that you're trying to teach.
Yeah, am I being too loud for the microphone? We'll
Just
figure it
roll
out.
with it.
All right, cool. Anyways, so the interesting thing there, of course, is all these super dedicated people, like you said, that it's like the inverse of the bad situation where you have a non-dedicated person that tries and gets an A,
right.
or like learns and learns, gets an A, and then flushes the material.
Right.
You have these super dedicated people that aren't getting the A, right? And so I started thinking, not just because of this, I also frame pwn.college as a dojo, right? And this initially when trying to explain it to people, I said, okay, when you enter pwn.college or ASU CSE 466 course, you're a white belt in security, right? In the same way, like when you walk into a martial arts dojo, you're obviously capable of existing in a physical world, right? Yeah, moving your limbs. But then you learn to do martial arts in the same way you learn to hack. And initially I said, okay, we start you off as a white belt and then we take you to a yellow belt, right? So you're kind of like a very introductory hacker, or you understand cybersecurity at an introductory level. And then I kept stuffing the class full of more and more challenges and more modules. And I mean, I think the first time I ran CSE 466, we had 7 modules. Last semester, we had 12, right? So that's like, and each module was bigger. And students were putting in enormous amounts of work, which, I have ideas to mitigate. But I realized we're no longer really stopping at the yellow belt level. There's 2 points in the course, the middle and the end, where it's like, all right, we've kind of moved into a different phase, right? So in the beginning, you know nothing about security, and then like kind of simple security.
So what are the things they would have to do by the middle of the course?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of modules, you learn how to reverse engineer software, how to exploit simple memory corruption vulnerabilities, how to write shell code, and how to escape certain simple jails, right? Sandboxes. And I think those are the 5 sandboxing, shell coding. It's a slightly different order, but sandboxing, shell coding, reverse engineering, memory corruption, I think is the 5, and then 4. And then the 5th one, and then there's the first one is this program misuse module. Right now it's a bit of a slog where you have to misuse like 100 different programs to make them read files. But we have brilliant ideas, not to call ourselves brilliant, but to really improve that for the next iteration. But so you have these 5 things, and then you have this sort of almost like a yellow belt test, right? Like in a dojo, and that is putting all the things you've learned together and trying to do something very cool. And it's surprisingly complicated things. Like by the time students get their yellow belt, they have performed a JIT spray exploit against a just-in-time compiled custom architecture.
I mean blue belt.
Yellow
This
belt.
is yellow. Okay, wow.
Yeah. So there's a custom architecture I wrote for reverse engineering practice called Yan 85, And one of the later levels of the reverse engineering is a blind reverse engineering attack against Yan 85, where the instruction set architecture is randomized, but you really have to use different clever tricks to write shellcode for it.
Oh, cool.
Right. And you know, it's I think this sort of JIT spray thing that within Yan 85 that the yellow belt portion of the course culminates in. I mean, it's a proxy for a real problem, right? JIT spray is used in actual browser exploitation, and all the building blocks are there. And so, what happens at the end of yellow belt, right? Well, initially you just got your whatever A on that module, and you moved on. And then the blue belt takes students through advanced exploitation concepts, how to do ROP, how to exploit heap vulnerabilities. We talk about race conditions, talk about kernel security, right? By the time they finish the course, in that last putting it all together module, they do a challenge that has a race condition that they exploit to induce between threads, that they exploit to induce a heap error, that they then leverage into a write what where primitive, that they then and a leak primitive that they then use to gain code execution inside a sandbox, and then they have to escape it. It's just, you know, kind of much more complicated security scenarios than you would see. And so what happens, like, after the yellow belt, after the blue belt, obviously anyone that finishes that blue belt section gets an A in the course. And when I talk about pwn.college to people, I say, okay, well, and then later you have, you know, the later stage. But I realized partway through, well, people should get something. It's a very hard, like, everyone says, yeah, my course is very hard, but
what about, but don't hackers hack for recognition?
Yeah, so hackers hackers are an interesting group, right? So I think a lot of these hackers hack for a lot of these students that become hackers. They hack for the thrill of truly understanding something well enough to hack it, right? But I think recognition is I love the spotlight, right? But I
don't know what you're talking about. You forced me into doing this podcast at the last possible moment.
That's season 2. Come on. This is a very so I really wanted some level of recognition for the students that have really really pushed through. And so I had this idea. I keep talking about belts, right? So why not actual
dramatic reveal
belts for pwn.college, right? When someone solves every challenge on the way to the yellow belt, they get the yellow belt when they pass that test. And the test is, of course, more hacking challenges. Same with the blue belt.
And the reward is more hacking challenges.
And the reward is more hacking challenges on the way to the blue belt. And, of course, you know, aside from the physical belts, which the plan is to mail to everyone that earned it, you also get a spot on the website. There's a blue belt and a yellow belt registry on the site.
Nice. So something that actually people can point to maybe for applying for jobs or something. And it's something different than, hey, I got an A in some course, right?
Yes.
It's like a lot of people have taken that course. And actually, this ties in very nicely for the fact that all of your course is basically available online. So an employer can actually see, okay, what does this actually mean? Go through the course and see that, wow, this is a level of rigor that, you know, I didn't have, let's say, in my security course.
Yeah, that's the hope. The hope is that this will be actually useful for people, the belts themselves.
What's the URL for pwn.college?
Yeah, so the URL for pwn.college is pwn.college, right?
So just like it sounds.
Just like it sounds. pwn.college. Of course, I got these belts, and there was a slight problem. Let me show the viewers. For those of you,
the microphone's over here, man. So.
Oh, sorry. For those of you that are,
why don't I just do it? Keep going.
For those of you that are listening from home without video, unfortunately, the belts say pwn.college, pwm.college. And I have 100 of these guys. So I don't really know what to do with 100 misprinted pwn.college belts.
So if anybody out there would like to own the domain pwn.college, feel free, register it, and and talk to us. Exactly. We can hook you up with some belts.
With some merchandise. Anyways, eventually we will get properly spelled belts and start sending them out. But this was super interesting. What I found by the end is about half and half ASU and non-ASU students made it through the full belt level, and this. And by the way, Pwn College is still up. Pwn College doesn't exist, but Pwn College is still up and accessible, and you can go and earn your belt even now, right? But it's very cool to see as word spreads, more and more non-ASU students get impacted by this. I have someone emailing me like every week saying, "Hey, man, thank you for this resource. It was great," which is super touching. And at this point, I think we have 1,000 accounts, 1,000 people on the site progressed through some level. Let's say about 500 of them are like actually seriously in the process, which is pretty exciting.
Cool. So not only, that's another interesting thing. Not only is it like a time limited, 1 semester course, which it was, right? Mm-hmm. And there's clearly some benefit to those people that probably are doing it all together as a cohort, right?
Yeah,
working through it together, but it's still available for people who want to go out there and try it and learn on their own and watch the videos and tackle the challenges. That's great. So then where do people go from there? So, you're a newly minted blue belt from Pwn College. What do you do from there?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. This was it's obviously a very common question that students, especially students that learn, because a lot of students, they really get hooked on this material, right? Like I did when I started CTF.
And maybe for the people who, it's been a while since they did school, right? So a semester is 15 weeks. So this is a 15-week, pretty intensive class that you have. And at the end, they, have enough knowledge to be dangerous, right? And to start, more than dangerous, right? But playing in CTS, you've taken them up to a level of modern exploitation that really means they can actually, do some damage.
Yeah. And the question is, of course, what does that actually translate to in the real world? Mm-hmm. So can these kids that go through and earn their blue belt, can they then move on to immediately making a real world impact, right? In a security context? And so I created another class at ASU to explore this. And at the end of, for those watching from Pwn College, this was the follow-on class that unfortunately I couldn't open up to the world because we were, trying to break real software. And I think that would have gotten out of hand pretty fast. And basically what we did, the very tail end of Pwn College actually covers some first steps in automatic vulnerability discovery, fuzzing and these sort of things. And what we did was we said, okay, we're going to have an entire class around vulnerability research. The idea is you pick a bunch of targets to analyze, real world targets with real impact that are used by real people. We're going to analyze them. We're going to find bugs. We're going to create proof of concept exploits for them, and we're going to submit, responsibly disclose those vulnerabilities, right? And this was basically, I had this whole syllabus written out, and I was super excited about it. The students were super excited about it, and we actually did the class. And so now we're most of the way through the class. And actually, that class is going to have a public stream on the Pwn College Twitch as our final exam during ASU's final weeks, like the last week of April.
Cool. So that's so that will be then. What's the format of that final exam? Like, are you gonna? Is it videos of them taking tests?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you may run into some FERPA violations.
Exactly. No, it's a presentation. All the students are. So here's how we ran the class, right? We took there were 20 students in the class, 10 of whom were fresh blue belts, right? And 10 of whom had some security experience before. And so we mixed them all up into 5 groups of 4. Every group picked a target, analyzed it, and so forth. And so the final exam, that's just the time slot. That's we're going to have the final exam, basically their presentation of, lessons learned, like what does this sort of bug hunting look like in the real world? What does exploitation look? What are the interesting incentives and disincentives to actually bother with exploitation in the real world? All of this sort of stuff. And so far, just as a
so wait, frame us a little bit in the course, right? So we already said semester is about 15 weeks. So sitting now, roughly, where are we in that course?
Yeah, we're like 12 weeks in to the semester.
Nice.
And so we have a couple of weeks left. I originally had a schedule that I just kind of guesstimated on, right? So we would start in with target selection, and we spend a couple of weeks looking at targets, looking at existing vulnerabilities in those targets, seeing, figuring out the security reporting channels, stuff like that. We would spend a couple, maybe 2 weeks creating a vulnerability analysis plan. So, are you going to fuzz it? Are you what are you going to do? How are you going to find your bugs? Then we're going to spend a month finding those bugs. I think at this point we're like at 8 or 9 and the weeks in, and then we would spend the rest of the time exploiting and then reporting these bugs. The reality was a little different, right? So what we found was students really quickly actually picked targets, right?
And is this because they already had some notion in their mind of some important software? And like, when you talk about important, what kind of stuff are we talking about, right? Because there's obviously there's things like OpenSSL that we know underpins a lot of the web, or libcurl, or like there's different, these fundamental pieces of the internet and the web that bind everything together that's used in tons of software. Yeah,
so I actually somewhat encouraged them to avoid this super critical software. And I'll tell you why. It's because a lot of people are looking at it, right? And so I didn't want them to grab something like Google Chrome and then, not find anything interesting there. I'm sure they would, right? I mean, even, Google Chrome has vulnerabilities, obviously.
Right.
But it's...
And so if we think about, maybe this is kind of the notion, right? If you think about the tree of vulnerabilities where the incredibly difficult ones are at the top and the really easy kind of ones that fall out, especially from automated, fuzzing type methods, if somebody's applied AFL to the same program, they've already shook that tree and all the lower levels fell off. And so it becomes much harder to pick.
There's this really interesting concept that I think is it's kind of common sense, considered to be common sense, but it's not actually well measured scientifically, is that a program analysis technique makes itself obsolete very quickly, right? Because it very quickly, if you have really something that's turnkey applicable, you apply it to everything, and now you have found all the bugs that it's going to find.
And that is from the point of view of vulnerability analysis programs. That actually, in some sense, that's the goal. I've never heard it phrased quite that way, right? But the goal is, it usually takes very expert knowledge to be able to, analyze source code or a program to find these vulnerabilities. So if you can, I've always phrased it like, if you can turn that into a turnkey solution that any developer can run, now you've kind of democratized that security knowledge, and you're making the, software, definitely safer for everyone because of that. But I haven't thought about it from the obsolescence perspective.
Yeah. And so, but because of this, of course, unless you're going to create new analysis tools and techniques, and I don't want to steal the thunder from my students' presentation, but some of them have.
Nice. And that's what if I can interject, this is something we found in our research, right? If you look at a complex target like our Favocado paper, right? It's like you look at a complex target, and if you look at a different, like a PDF rendering engine, and you look at or browsers, and you look at different parts that maybe nobody's thought, like different kind of glue layers.
That's right.
If you can try fuzzing that or in interesting ways, or testing that in interesting ways, it will shake out bugs usually.
Yeah. So like either these new techniques, new twists, new targets, even sub targets within an already. Right. One of the things, again, not to steal too much thunder, but like even for well analyzed targets, there are programs that are considered to be very well analyzed, that it turns out only small parts of them are very well analyzed, right? And you can easily stray into very unexplored territory and find bugs. So yeah,
it's interesting. Actually, sorry, I'm just thinking about like if you think of the universe of people fuzzing different software, and we kind of think about it in terms of research of the AFL bitmap, right, or the bitmask of things that have been hit. So if you think about that happening globally, nobody's sharing that data, so nobody actually knows what's hit or it's not hit. And so you could imagine so much CPU cycles are wasted because people keep fuzzing the same stuff that everybody else does, but nobody actually knows what it is. Yeah, there's something really interesting there.
Yeah. I mean, and I think this is a good role for academia to have, where I think academically a lot of these concepts can be explored. It's just, I mean, it's a question of manpower. Everyone is very spread out doing a lot of crazy other research. But it'd be cool to see research on this. But for whatever reason, basically the students, I encourage the students not to tackle stuff like Chrome or just very, very, like SSL, libSSL, stuff like this. But the students picked some very cool targets. Again, not to steal the thunder.
Yeah, don't say any of the specifics. Let's say. I think that'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, things that real people use, and they very quickly started finding
software
bugs.
that I've used. Actually, I know this for a fact.
That's right. Yeah. And so so basically in some sense, the target selection part, not that this is super important knowledge, but it just kind of delayed the class a bit because everyone had their targets, and then I was like, all right, then next week we're going to do the final target presentation. And they're like, yeah, but we just had like kind of 2 weeks where we talked about the same thing. So, a little bit of this sort of growing pains in the new class. And then they started analyzing. And this was an interesting phase because in the end, a lot of this class is a lesson about how to do VR, right?
Vulnerability research.
That's everyone. Right. Yeah. Vulnerability research, not virtual reality. But it's very easy to kind of have a very layman's understanding of, all right, we just put AFL in, you set it up and then run this in AFL. But the reality, there's a lot of tweaks and a lot of harnessing tweaks, and you can actually go and say, okay, well, why is my program running slow in my fuzzer? Well, oh, hey, it's because there's this sleep there for whatever reason to make the interface look nicer or whatever, right? And so, you can start really digging deep and talking about, making bugs more evident because of how you compile it with sanitizers, etc. And a lot of these are to practitioners, to whom I would frame as brown belts in the cybersecurity on the pwn.college kind of dojo map. This is obvious, but to blue belts, it's not yet obvious, right? And so this was a very cool journey for a lot of these teams on the way to starting to fuzz and to do other analyses and to get these bugs. And actually, I should have, this took a surprisingly long time, right? And then the actual analysis, and it's the cyclic process. You try the analysis, then you look at, why didn't it find any bugs? You look at what was the cover, you look at a lot of things, then you try it again, and then you iterate and so forth. And so then students started finding bugs, right? And this is very exciting, and bugs in real stuff used by real people. And then the course fell apart, the original plan, right? So the original plan was identify targets, find the bugs, exploit the bugs, report the bugs. But
I guess kind of when you think of find the bugs, does that so essentially when thinking about it from a fuzzing perspective, right? What your nuts and bolts of what you're doing, you're running a fuzzer that's running some input, so you have input that crashes the program.
Yeah.
But that actually tells you nothing about the bug itself, right? You actually
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so like the finding the bug part is not the same thing as a crash.
Exactly. And this is one place where things went, well, not south, just a little unexpected, right?
Yeah.
In that I think I had like a week planned in the whole course for like vulnerability through triage or something. I don't remember how much, but like, I mean, some of my students are still triaging bugs they found, maybe a month and a half ago, right? Because these are large programs with, just complex stuff going on, and it's many components, right?
Programs, and these are even on reproducible crashes, right?
Yes.
Mean, where it's deterministic, this input crashes
Absolutely.
This program.
Yeah, and it's still, I mean, the input might dive through 4 different libraries that are all themselves. So there's even this fundamental is what's screwing up? Is it the libraries, and it's just
different kind of fundamental attribution error.
Exactly. It's super interesting. And so that's one unexpected thing that, I mean, in retrospect it makes sense. Another one is the moment you find a bug, you want to report it. You don't want to sit around exploiting this bug because someone else might stumble on it and report it and patch it. And in fact, this happened for the first couple of bugs that my students found.
Not within each other, right? But just
just in general, like out in the world, there was someone else analyzing this piece of software, and so then we're like, all right, well, what we're going to do is we're going to report it, and then we're going to exploit it, right? So then they would report it, and then they get their CV, and they're like, all right, let's exploit it. But at that point, something very surprising happened. Surprising to me, I was always like, exploitation. We're going to exploit this real world software. We're going to make it dance, and but. They're like, yeah, but why? It's already fixed in the real world. We already had our impact. Let's just find the next bug. Right. And so it was this super fascinating takeaway for me that, the exploitation wasn't the biggest draw. The biggest draw was, finding and fixing those bugs.
And do you think bug bounties may have, because I don't think any of the, at least to my knowledge, I don't know that any of the students are directly submitting to bug bounty programs, right? They're reporting to developers themselves.
Yeah.
So it's not like there's a direct monetary incentive for them to just find as many CVs as possible. But if you think about that from the bug bounty perspective, right, the goal is find a bug, not necessarily create an exploit that fully exploits that bug. Sometimes you need to do that to prove that whatever you're doing actually does work, right? And so that's definitely necessary. But yeah, from the perspective of return on investment from a bug bounty perspective, right, it makes sense. Find as many things that indicate a bug as possible, report it, and move on, and don't ever go back unless they push back and say it's not that important. Right?
Yeah, and then exploit it and show the
exactly. No, you have 10K and not 5K or whatever it is.
Exactly, and I think because we aren't targeting the sort of monetary, there's no monetary incentive for the exploit in the class, and the grading criteria doesn't. It's actually, I mean, I just want to see them do awesome stuff, right? I'm not like concerned with 8 exploits or whatever. I mean, why, right? So with the incentive of the exploit actually removed, their enthusiasm seems diminished for exploitation,
which then also ties in with CTFs, right? Because CTFs are this perfect laboratory that force you to not only find the bug but also write that exploit, and then in an attack defense CTF, patch the vulnerability and go through other people's patches to find ways to bypass those patches.
Yeah, exactly. And then the question, of course, becomes like, is this as relevant as we... is the relevance of this in line with our excitement for it?
For CTFs.
For CTFs,
yeah.
And this is, in some sense, a taboo topic in CTF, right? Because I think it is very clear that CTF is very relevant to security, right? You have top CTFers then going on to impactful security careers, impactful vulnerability research careers, in Microsoft security, Google security, and their own companies, and pwn to own, and academia, and so on. So I don't think the value of CTF is necessarily under question, but I think as part of that general topic, we're always very defensive of CTF.
Right.
Yes, this is relevant. You do need to understand how to do, counterfeit object-oriented programming in order to, there's some value of it in security.
And I think that going, and we actually, probably on the flip side is we've heard, and we probably can't name any names of any companies, but we've talked to people who work inside companies in their security organizations who do essentially vulnerability research on the company's own products. They find bugs and they can't even convince their own developers within the company to fix these problems, even though they have, let's say, the equivalent of a crashing input, or they know exactly what the bug actually is. And so we've heard from them that is the point where you actually do need to write the exploit to demonstrate the impact to get other people to fix it. But it's different. Maybe, I don't know if it's open source that's why that's different, because, I don't know about the threat of a CVE, but like a CVE being out there about a thing is something that really incentivizes a developer to fix that. Whereas if it's internal to the company and they can say, but nobody else knows about this.
I'm not sure why. I do agree that development being done in the open changes those incentives as well, right? So it just looks bad if your stuff crashes, right?
And I wonder if the other thing I was thinking about, I wonder if the fact that they have access to source code makes this a little bit easier, because you can maybe more, even, without doing the whole exploit, if you're able to take that crashing input, analyze the source code, and through libraries and stuff gets crazy, right? But at least doing some kind of root cause analysis is a little bit easier than doing that on a binary.
Yeah, you can also instrument things a lot more, right? So you can compile with the full sanitization and see kind of exactly what might be impacted. It's very interesting to me. I haven't quite. Hopefully, we'll have developed that philosophy a bit more by the kind of final class stream. But there's something there to me, like something.
You graduate from pwn.college and you join Crash College.
Exactly. It's just a very. It's almost a scary thought to me, because the second half, the Blue Belt course, is all about advanced exploitation. Right. And advanced exploitation, do you really need, maybe even ROP? Should we stop teaching ROP? I don't know. I like ROP. I think it.
Well, conceptually, you can look back and say, well, if we never, let's say, invented ROP, we'd be in a really bad place, because any crash, anybody would say, well, we have ASLR, so who cares?
Yeah. Whereas maybe there's
non-executable stack, everything done.
Yeah. In the shadows, the ROP is being used. So of course we, from that perspective, I agree with you.
Or, I guess the other thing it makes me think of, so there's clearly that spectrum, right, of like, clearly for people who are doing purely offensive security work, where their job is to find these bugs, write the exploits for them, and then never tell anyone so that they don't get fixed, right? Like, that is clearly, those skills are needed. And I guess we and you had hoped that those skills and that desire translated over to the defensive side of things, of proactively finding bugs before attackers use them.
And I think that dichotomy is interesting, because what I feel now is you have the yellow belt as a foundation, and then you almost have two different tracks. You have the exploitation track, where you go down that blue belt, path, the path of the warrior. Then you have the path of the protector, or the paladin, let's say, I don't know, where that's this course, right? That's automatic bug finding and triaging and understanding and responsible disclosure and maybe fixing it, and
but that, I guess, and then the other thing I'm thinking about, and actually this brings up a good point, maybe we know people that we can talk to who do the kinds of vulnerability analysis on high value complex targets like browsers, which have multiple levels of defense. That what we know from pwn to own and those kinds of things is to successfully, fully bypass sandbox and everything requires not one bug, but like 4 or 5 bugs. And I think it's the chaining together and that glue, like, where, from what I understand, a lot of the CTF, exploitation mindset comes in, right? It's about what kind of capabilities do I have at this stage that lets me get to this other thing that leaks this thing that I can use to then JIT spray and do this other thing. And so, maybe it's one of those, maybe just to be an internet software janitor of just like, I'm just going to clean up and find some bugs. Like, you don't need a ton of to fuzz things well and correctly and at the scale you want is
there's a skill there,
insane skill.
Absolutely.
But that's interesting. But maybe with more complex, more interesting, or more complex hardened targets, these skills become that. Maybe that's the gap in the separator.
And maybe it's also like a future thing where, like, probably to tackle something like Chrome in any meaningful way, you need all of the skills. But like you said, there's plenty of cleanup work to be done before you run out of it.
Right.
But it really makes me feel like, so my plan for next year had been to split College into 2 classes, the yellow belt class and the blue belt class, but now I'm thinking 3 classes. but now there are only 2 semesters in a year, so now we have this problem where if someone takes 466 in their senior year, they have to choose one route. I don't know what the right answer is.
Cool. Well, I don't know that we have the beautiful thing about, well, I guess I could say life or academia or whatever, is that you get to reiterate and refine these things, just like you've seen College, right? I mean, the thing that maybe didn't really come across is you only actually, like, this one that you ran fully open was the 3rd iteration, if I recall.
That's right. Yeah,
right.
It was.
So you and Connor were able to refine College to the point where it actually could support that. You weren't hitting. You had growing pains because of number of people, right? But you weren't hitting like fundamental things that I know you guys reworked that every time.
Oh yeah. No, it was very interesting because, like, for example, the first time we ran CSE 466 with College, I think in the 3rd week I looked at the roster and I was like, 75 to 80% of the people are going to fail this course. What is going on? And what is going on is I already had too much material. So, for example, I think at that point we were on reverse engineering, and I realized that just throwing these poor kids at increasingly complex elves is just insane. So one example of an innovation we made was teaching challenges, where every other challenge would basically say, hey, I'm going to walk you through my own solution, like in process, like printf, the current value of blah is blah, and so on, right? And this raised the rate of people passing the class to, like, 2/3 just from that change.
Wow.
Right? And there were other changes we made, but over the years we've been remixing it. So and this is just another step in that remixing.
Exactly. So it's more at the high level and understanding where these classes fit in kind of the overall curriculum and your understanding of the progression. But yeah, I think there's definitely obviously very good value in students applying this technique to real world targets, right? I mean, beyond the kind of obvious benefits, like you can graduate and point to some CVEs that you have, so it makes it easier to get a security job, I think. But other things of, like, reading code, like, to write a harness for somebody else's system, you actually have to understand something about that target and that system. So I think that's a hugely important skill.
Yeah. It's, I think I don't know what my expectation was for this SQL course. That is not SQL, obviously, but the sequel to Bone.
I was going to make that joke, thanks.
Sorry. But the course definitely feels much more important as a concept than I had. I thought it'd be a cool experiment that we do once, and then cool, we did it. But I think there's definitely something really interesting there that kind of felt similarly when we started down the College route, or that walk to Starbucks, or no, it wasn't Starbucks. What was the coffee shop we would go to a lot?
It has some year, which
1876,
maybe.
Yeah,
it's some famous historical year that had to do with the U.S. So I feel bad that I don't know it.
Yeah. Anyways, there's a coffee shop on campus. It's very cool. It's like a charity coffee shop, right? So it's attached to a Salvation Army, and you could. I don't know if you ever did this. Like, you could buy a coffee sleeve to tack on the wall, and someone could just take that coffee sleeve and redeem it for free coffee. It had a really. I mean, I say had. I have no idea if it survived the pandemic. I haven't looked, but yeah, it was a very very cool place. So we would go there every day, and on the way back, we were just talking about cybersecurity education and like how there's got to be some sort of like a practice ability of it. Yeah, I felt there an interesting thread that I also feel somewhere is hidden under this course, right? Which is very, very interesting.
Yep.
But anyways, that's enough about College, or Poem College.
People are saying they're talking about the poems.
The poems, yeah, exactly. I like the pulse width modulation too. That's a good one. Maybe I should talk to the physics department about these belts.
If you could explain that to them, maybe they'd listen to you.
Exactly. Let's talk about season 2.
Yes, in the middle of season 2.
Yeah. So we're obviously running season 2. What's our plan?
So the plan is we're gonna try to do a little less frequent because the weekly schedule is a little bit demanding. Yeah. So we don't know the exact cadence. We're probably gonna experiment with some things. Probably every other week is what we're looking at. Yeah, and we've been, got some really good feedback from actually the last season of some things that people wanted to see. And so, yeah, bringing in, I think it's explore some of the ideas we're talking about now, talk to other CTFers, new teams. I think something that's always interesting to me is you see, in new CTFs, like a new team pops up in the top 10 and you're just like, who is that team, right? And that it spreads through the grapevine and the CTF Discord and all that stuff. So, yeah, I think it's fascinating looking at who's there. I really want to dig into the past. I know we should start trying to take advantage of people who we know who organized, previous iterations of DEF CON CTF. I think I really want to try to capture that early CTF hacker scene and get those stories down so that we kind of have them.
Yeah. And with things slowly starting to open up, I think it would be really awesome to go, we talked about it. You go on site and talk to, I don't know, the people running the CTFs live if they have a moment, right?
Yeah.
This
that'd be very cool. So as you're, thinking about the CTFs that you're organizing as they start maybe being in person, think about it. You can shoot us an email or whatever and invite CTF Radio to come and do a live. We could actually literally do it live. We could do it recorded, whatever.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of cool opportunities. It's an exciting time in the CTF community. I feel there's a lot of this. I mean, excitement everywhere, right? Obviously, as the world starts,
very much,
moving toward a reopening. Yeah. I don't know what else. Should we talk about my awesome hoodie?
I've said multiple times on this podcast that we're not a fashion show, but I'll do you this one thing since we have the camera right here. Stand up, turn around, do your little fashion thing.
So, check it out.
You can't talk when you do this because the microphone is over here.
Oh, you're right. So, you can. I wanted to narrate.
And we can see here. Oh, walk down the aisle. Can you walk? No. Do you not like a catwalk, man? Like you're a model. Okay, if you can't see it, he's walking towards the thing. No, like sideways. Okay, start from over there. I'm gonna direct him. Start from the corner. Walk down here. Do your strut, but do it slow mo so I can talk about it more. And in this next outfit, we have Jan Veli, who's a model from Eastern European descent, specifically Russia, but he immigrated here as a young man, and now you can see he's wearing a what looks like a hoodie, but on close inspection you say, wait, is that a hoodie? No, it's not a hoodie. It's actually a gi. So it's a mixture of a gi and a hoodie with nice detailing on the inside of the hood, and it has a logo on the front, and I really like that asymmetrical cut. I bet that's coming up in the next season in the fall fashion style. So, and folks at home, what would go great with a gi like this? A pwn.college belt.
Perfect.
All right. Well,
I swear no one paid us to do that or even gave us a free gi. This gi cost real money.
You paid real money. I guess if you want to send me one, I'll take one for free. But
so I actually bought two.
What?
And I wish I could gift it to you on the show, but when they came out, they'd been sold out for years, right? And this was shockingly, the only gi hoodie hybrid.
What?
I know.
That's insane.
Right? So I'd been monitoring this thing closer than like the 3090, sales points and so forth. But I got the notice that they're in stock, and I'm like, I'm getting one. And then I had this moment of terror where like, okay, normally I wear medium stuff, but it was the pandemic. And should I buy a large?
Wow.
And what if I buy a medium and then they sell out and I have to starve myself to fit into it?
I see.
And so I bought both. The medium is what I'm wearing. It turns out the pandemic I managed to make it through still being able to fit into the medium hoodie, and I returned the large, and that worked out great. But I mean you're probably a medium size too, so
you don't have two.
I had a medium and large.
Okay,
and
you bought two.
If I had two, I would have gifted you the
Jesus.
second one right now.
I'm super glad we actually dodged that bullet.
I got you super excited. I'm sorry, but
yeah, super excited is one way of framing it.
Exactly.
Cool, man. All right. Well, so you can see we're in a new setup. We've never done it like this usually we're doing this on our computers. So I'm going to try to freestyle the outro. And in the meantime, I'm probably not going to edit this episode very much. So I think you're getting raw Jan and Adam in their natural habitat. So thanks everyone for listening. I'm Adam D. He's Zardus. Together we are CTF Radiooo. You can find us online at ctfradio.oo. Is that right?
CTF
Radio. If you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email, ctfradio3os@gmail.com. And this is where we got some great people who've been sending us suggestions, viewers and listeners, about what they'd like to hear in future seasons. We're on Twitter at CTF Radio, and so you can also find us there. And I think that's it, man. I don't know what else to say. So
should we do a high five to close it out?
All right, we haven't been this close literally in a year.
Yeah.
It's been a weird day. So
it's exciting.
All right, high five.
Boom.